it from me, over to Robin and Hector.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kelly. This is so brilliant, and the symmetry is just fantastic because we finished the last season of Accessibility Insights speaking to Anita Mortallone of Xbox, which obviously is a Microsoft product or kind of ecosystem. And we've now got Hector Minto to kick off the next season. Hector, absolutely brilliant to have you on. The busiest guy in inclusive accessibility, and really, really amazing to have you here. We've managed to grab half an hour of Hector, and I couldn't be more pleased than kicking off the new season speaking to you. How are you?
I'm really well. Thanks for inviting me. I love that. I love that intro. I feel busy, but it's good. It's good to be busy, and I think in my time in the assistive technology world, it's never felt more that we're part of that kind of mainstream conversation, right? I think that me being busy is a sign of the fact that I think we're getting somewhere on accessibility. I hope.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we're going to talk about mainstream versus specialist a little bit later on. So we start off every one of these sessions asking you what your kind of poison is, your beverage of choice to help you get through this ordeal. I've just got a normal cup of coffee here.
Okay. Well, I haven't got it with me, but through the pandemic, well, before the pandemic, I was already one of those sourdough guys. I love a kind of a process. So now I am a kombucha guy. I make kombucha at home, I promise. I'll bring you some next time I see you, Robin. But just one of those mindful things that I can kind of, make myself. Kids have fizzy drink in the fridge all the time. I'm a little bit addicted, embarrassingly.
Wow, I mean, I like Marmite, and Marmite is like the
Yeah,
epitome of what people either love or hate, and kombucha's a little bit like that, I think.
it's a lot like that. Yeah, yeah. I was reading quite a few kind of screwed up noses as people have tasted my early efforts. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, let's kick off by looking back. We're certainly going to look ahead, hopefully, a little bit later on. Um, let's talk about accessibility and inclusion over the last, say, 10 years. A
Mm.
long kind of, a lot has happened in the last 10 years. I'm thinking rise of mobile, I'm thinking specialist versus mainstream, etc. So, what do you think has changed in this landscape over that long time frame and maybe a little bit more recently as well?
Yeah.
And, what kind of forces are at play?
10 years is a long time, right, Robin? I mean,
Hmm.
and I think we sometimes forget just how long 10 years is. But my biggest reflection on this is well, twofold: the changing relationship of humans with technology. It's not that people go to work to use tech now. It's not that people go to school to use technology. We live with technology. We did 10 years ago, but goodness me, like everything is digital now. You can't watch a TV program now without being invited to engage digitally, right? You can't listen to a parliamentary discussion without them making reference to websites or services. And so, this whole dependence on technology is on the rise. Of course it is. We know that, and that's going global, and that's an opportunity for us all in the accessibility space to kind of expand our reach. But when I talk to people about this topic, it's always, look, you can't live without technology now. We used to talk about the internet as a human right, and everyone kind of screwed their nose up a little bit at us and sort of went, "What? Really? Come on, it's not really a human right." Look, it really is becoming a human right now. If you're disconnected
Hmm.
through social or economic circumstances, you are excluded from society. And accessibility is exactly that same kind of topic. It's,
Hmm.
if you cannot access that service, you're excluded, and that starts impacting your existence, your human rights, right? So I think the biggest change for me is this expansion of technology into all of our lives, and this real focus now that we need to put on the fact that people with disabilities will be materially impacted by that digital transformation if we don't put real focus on accessibility. So that's kind of my kind of uber kind of reflection on the last 10 years. And then the second one, I think, is, the reason I joined Microsoft 6 years ago now was because, honestly, I mean, I've been doing 26 years in assistive tech now. Uh, yeah, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. 26 years, yeah. And, it took me 20 of those years to get to Microsoft. Yeah, before that, it was always like we were building assistive technology around the ecosystem and didn't really have a dialogue with big tech. Now, what all of us are doing, Microsoft, Google, Apple, we're all communicating and engaging with the disability community to ensure that that you help us maintain this focus on accessibility. So mainstream tech is the other kind of reflection, is that they've recognized their responsibilities have changed from being an add-on, a passion project for some, or somebody else's product that needs to be accessible, and then being compatible with their systems. And it's really starting to be embedded within mainstream technology. Things that we never thought we'd see in mainstream tech, are now there. And so that's the other thing that comes with challenges. So maybe if you can allow me a kind of a third reflection, is we've got to take the assistive tech world with us. It's not free to sell assistive technology or to raise awareness. It costs money and budgets to actually raise awareness about accessibility. And one of the reasons that assistive technology has cost so much in the past is because the cost of sale is so high.
Mm-hmm.
So for those specific bits of technology, what we've got to do as the mainstream tech world is take the assistive technology providers with us on this journey to expand their reach globally, and make sure that actually that we recognize there's a role for both, the specialist tech and the mainstream tech in this space. Is that a decent starter for
That's
10,
brilliant.
Robin?
I mean, there's this huge sort of blurring of
Yeah,
the edges between
yeah.
specialist and mainstream, because like you were saying, the mainstream providers like Microsoft have really stepped up their game and recognized that this is, something that could benefit everyone, and really have put in some top quality um,
Hmm.
features and functionality that really have in some ways eaten into the need for specialist, and relatively high cost
Hmm.
because of the economy of scale isn't there, and that sort of thing. I would love talking about government hearings for the government to fund a lot more AT, because we'd really
Hmm.
get the economy of scale there. But yeah, absolutely.
I think there's one thing there as well, Robin, to think about is, uh, if you think back, people used to define themselves by their technology. So a Dragon user, let's just pick on that one, a voice control, PC user would say, I'm a Dragon user. I think now they say, I use voice,
Yeah.
because they've got voice on their phone, they've got voice dictate in Windows, they've got programmatic control coming in Windows this year. But there are times when they need all the macro support of a product like Dragon, with all that specialist kind of coding they've created for themselves to optimize their use of it. So we've got to help people stop defining themselves by a single piece of technology and start talking more umbrella terms about, I'm a screen reader user, or I'm a voice user, or I use magnification, and not say, not hang our hat on a single product. I think that helps all of us then exist or coexist in that space.
Yeah, because there are many different screen readers, for example, in the
Yeah.
devices that I use, and they're all really, really good, really fit for purpose.
Mm.
So it's really weird, though, talking to you about specialist versus mainstream, because, it started with the accessible Xbox games controller,
Yeah.
and now you guys have actually branched out a little bit more in quite significant ways into specialist, which I would have not have predicted several years ago. So do you want to just briefly talk about the newest additions?
Sure. So we're not quite there yet. So it'll be actually just a few months away now. It will release the Microsoft mouse, the adaptive mouse. It's really an extension of the Xbox adaptive controller, if you think about it. What they did there with the Xbox controller is they said, look, this design of a controller with all of the complexity of buttons just doesn't work for a whole lot of people with physical disabilities. And so we adapted it so you could essentially configure your own Xbox adaptive controller with a series of switches and things. So for people kind of trying to imagine what that is, think of driving a car, but putting a head switch on your left and a head switch on your right, and you'd be able to steer left and right on the car,
That sounds a
rather
bit
than
scary.
having to use that joystick, right? And so people started building their own rigs. And that led to a load of further engagement with the community of people with physical disabilities of all types. And the logical place for a company like Microsoft to go was the mouse, right? Microsoft kind of invented the mouse, right? So we're kind of coming back to kind of a little bit of a reinvention. The adaptive mouse is going to allow you to essentially 3D print your own tail. That's the first option. So regardless of what you require in terms of the size and the molding of that mouse into your hand, you're going to be able to get a load of designs, open source, or design your own using CAD, and then download and print out, 3D print out your own tail that will clip into your mouse. That's the first configuration. But then the other smart thing is it comes with a hub that allows you to create extra switches and macros for things that you commonly do. So if you wanted to have a kind of a turn on my camera in Teams and mute button, yeah, or whatever your configuration is, you can configure that now all to a single switch. So we're going to basically reinvent the physical presence of the mouse, but then also add in this extra configurability of the mouse. The third option is that it comes with a D-pad. For those familiar with the Xbox, again, you've got that kind of that D-pad, up, down, left, right option as well. That will act as your mouse, but then that gives you kind of a joystick mouse. And so lots of people are now already looking at different molds, and occupational therapists are going to be super interested in this product because it's going to be off the shelf, very low cost, but then fully configurable to give people computer access. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I didn't know how quickly we would get there on Microsoft providing, specialist assistive technology. Is the mouse specialist though? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping personally that that utility that it comes with allows me to configure those macros and things from the keyboard as well. That might be cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah. Like any of these things, we never know what people are going to do with them. Seeing AI, Robin. My favorite story about seeing AI was a university professor who basically had people coming in and out of his room all the time. Yeah, busy university, people coming in, dropping mail off in his room, dropping their reports in, all this kind of stuff. And he set up the face detection on his mobile phone, literally pointing at his door in his office, so that everybody who walked in the room, he knew exactly who they were coming in the room. And I just thought, like, nobody could have imagined that that's how somebody would use seeing AI, right? But they did, right? And so I'm a bit like that with the mouse. I'm looking forward to there are going to be some really interesting applications that people will start doing with this, because we've essentially created something that's really, really configurable. And isn't that what accessibility is? Like, just it's allowing you to personalize your experience.
Yeah, it's absolutely choice. For people with disabilities, it's like potentially their only choice, but for other people, it's extra choice. And in some cases, like the adaptive Xbox controller, people without impairments have been using it to up their high scores and that sort of thing. So absolutely. And there's also the Surface adaptive kit with high-vis button stickers for the certain keys, better labeling for ports and cables, an easier way to open your laptop lid, that sort of thing. So
like a loop for your lid of your laptop to allow you to attach a lanyard. People have been using that in all sorts of ways. In fact, I've got it on my laptop here with Windows key Shift S, because I do a lot of screen snipping, and it's just one of those key presses that I just want to. I've got the location buttons on there, so I can very quickly access those buttons. The other thing, just quickly on this, is that the Surface Adaptive Kit, the Microsoft mouse, and all these sorts of things, they're going to be mainstream available, right? And that's the other thing that we need to do on the topic of disability inclusion and accessibility is let people see that it's just there, right? It's there when you buy your laptop. So every human buying a Surface online now, when they get it, they'll be offered a Surface Adaptive Kit. For $15, it's a small cost extra on top. Lots of discussions about that, but essentially it's there. It's sort of saying, do you want this? And so that also helps to raise awareness that people with disabilities use technology, and people become intrigued by that. So I think the other part of this is the fact that a mainstream company is saying this is a common part of what we do, and you should think about it.
Absolutely, awareness is key, and we're going to come back to that a little bit later on as well. So let's talk about the pandemic then. So the last 2 years, 2+ years, obviously everything's changed, but what do you think Microsoft's role in accessibility in particular across the pandemic has been? And, have you had personal experience in the shift or organizationally, in the shift to home working, for example? What has Microsoft learned throughout?
It's probably the part of the podcast where I tell people what I actually do for a living. So my job is to get globally, our field organization engaging with our customers proactively on the topic of accessibility. So first thing we want every business to do that we engage with is to leverage the investments we make. We put a lot of effort into accessibility in our products, and yet we still walk into businesses where people don't know that there are captions in Teams, or that you can add word prediction to your keyboard, or how to magnify. I mean, like people don't know these things are available. And so people are struggling within the major employers around the world with their technology, or certainly not optimizing their digital experience. So my role is essentially to work with our teams to help people unpick this within their own organizations. The pandemic was just honestly, it was just one of those moments where people started to realize how much disability they had in the infrastructure of their organizations. Yeah. So the coping and the covering and the kind of the life hacking that people had done in the physical office to maybe just not make their disability something they talked about, so people who were losing their hearing is a great example. Would make sure they turned up early in a meeting room, were able to lip read the presenter, and they got by. But the pandemic sent everybody home, and into a different way of working. And so what it led to from a Microsoft perspective, honestly, was a lot of customers coming to us and saying, help. Like, we didn't know we had 300 people with hearing loss, and we haven't turned the captions on in Teams. Yeah, we've locked it. We've stopped it. How do you turn this back on, please? Yeah, it was things like that started to happen. So DAD, our disability answer desk, which is available for consumers, but also available for businesses. Any business around the world can come and talk to us about accessibility. Our global use of that doubled. So through the pandemic, our numbers doubled, our call volume doubled on it. So people were turning to us because the new experience of disability was happening for people. Even those people who were using successfully assistive technology in the workplace were suddenly having to try to kind of get past the firewall at home with their assistive technology. So there were new issues as people kind of tried to set up at home with their assistive tech. So this, it really has been an opportunity to have a conversation about accessibility with a much larger group of people. So when you just introduced me as kind of one of the busiest people in the business, it got busier during the pandemic, I promise you. Companies that I had never met before were suddenly getting in touch and going, we've got these 12 colleagues who are just telling us that there's a problem now with Teams. Come and talk to us about it. How can we help? The beauty there is that when we get in and have that conversation about those 12 colleagues, is that we then get a chance to talk about the thousands of colleagues that they actually have with dyslexia, some vision loss, or some visual impairment, some hearing loss. And so they start to recognize this is a bigger topic than they first thought. So the pandemic has really put a focus on this new exclusion for a lot of people with disabilities. The other reflection I've got on this is a lot of people have kind of come to Microsoft to sort of say, how did you do the pandemic? So over the last 6 years, specifically, I would say, we've tried to get out there and say, here's how we do this. Everything from our events to our internal training. Accessibility is mandated for every single Microsoft employee now. How do you get an organization to that, right? Is something people ask us all the time. The pandemic really kind of led a lot of organizations to say to us, how do you do accommodation? How do you do manager training? How do you have a conversation about budgeting for assistive technology inside Teams? And so it's been an unpicker in some ways, Robin, is my reflection. I think also governments have kind of had to really start thinking a little bit harder about accessibility, or in fact, a lot harder. So I remember at the start of the pandemic, the now gone health secretary said, don't worry, all of your appointments can be digital, and we're going to make sure that that's possible for people. And it was like, oh, really? We better think about accessibility if you're going to be able to do that. So as rapid digital transformation is the other thing that's happened through the pandemic, isn't it? Yeah. And I always see that as an opportunity. There are risks, but I always see it as an opportunity to kind of, again, flag the accessibility conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, talking about government, the worst Wi-Fi for government meetings is when they're held at the House of Lords. It's absolutely atrocious, and they only apologise for it. So yeah, I mean, it's really kind of kicked several gears up in people's prioritization of connectivity, of inclusion. Hybrid is the new normal, and that has a lot of challenges.
I mean, come on, we all saw, didn't we, no, let's not pick on politicians too much, but we all saw, didn't we, the recordings of the council meetings, people trying to use their technology. And I think you and I, Robin, work in a world where we just think everybody knows how to use this stuff. But no, people don't know how to use technology, and a lot of people don't know how to use it. And so, when we saw people struggling with how do I come off mute, and we were all shouting at the screen, Control Shift M, just
Yeah.
hit your space bar, mate, hit your space bar. We take it for granted. This also should kind of help us reflect on accessibility. People, the knowledge is just not there, and so these are always opportunities to kind of raise with government that digital skills, are critical for people, and we've got to spend time there.
Absolutely. Teams has got about 58 different hotkeys, and I know them all.
Very good.
Cool. So
Control Shift Enter or Control Enter, is that your favorite? Back
yes,
to the home.
it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a good one.
So let's just talk about. We're not there yet. There is
No.
still a long way to go. What do you think then is the next? Will kind of take us up another gear yet? Is it kind of more awareness that we talked about earlier? Is it better legislation,
Yeah.
better tools? What do you think? Where's Microsoft's? I know where your focus is. It's in industry, it's in government, it's in the end user. But what Microsoft as a whole is thinking is the way to take us to the next level.
Yeah. So I'm really in. So a couple of things. Global awareness. We have to accept that we have a very Euro-US approach to accessibility. How many events do we go to, and it's like that's where that's really where the kind of the audience is coming from. And even within Euro, I would say the UK really is kind of where a lot of the activity is happening. So we have got to expand globally. So a lot of my attention is absolutely on that. So I have 15 teams around the world who are all driving out a strategy in their markets on awareness raising is one. Evangelism really matters. I hate to say it, as the lead evangelist, but it really matters that you get out there and say this matters and make it almost like a social justice issue, as we said at the start. And then execution, actually go and build the products and with our customers that are accessible. Microsoft is not just Office and Windows and Teams. We support businesses around the world to build their technologies. Yeah. And that's, to me, where I want to take accessibility next. I really believe in this. If you look at the European Accessibility Act, Robin, I know you're all over this, but when you think about ticket machines in airports, when you think about ATMs, when you think about e-readers, when you think about all of those things that the European Parliament is saying are going to need to be accessible, we're going to have to bring in the airlines, the banks, the healthcare providers. And that's where I think accessibility, that's the next generation of accessible experiences, is industry specific. Satya Nadella, I'm not one of these people who just quotes the CEO all the time, I promise. But Satya Nadella, I remember him speaking to Volkswagen, the CEO, about like, we're not going to build your technology for you. You're going to build your own operating system in our cloud. Yeah. And that's it. That to me is where we're going to get to, is that industries are building their operating systems. They're not going to be just using the incumbent operating systems. They're going to be looking at their entire digital strategies and owning everything all up, but it will be hosted in other people's clouds. Yeah. And so what's going to happen is the focus on accessibility is going to also then shift to the businesses. It's not going to be about, people using Windows to make that healthcare system accessible. That kiosk in that surgery is going to have accessibility built into it by law. And it's, like GDPR, that was a European thing. The European Accessibility Act doesn't need to be a European thing. If you're, Turkish Airlines, sorry, hang on. Singapore Airlines, coming into Heathrow with a kiosk, by European law, that's going to have to be accessible. So it's going to affect everybody. So my kind of crystal ball on this, and where I'm putting a lot of focus, with also the UK government ambassadors, by the way, all of the different disability ambassadors, is to start talking about what's the digital journey for each industry, not just what are the gadgets going to be, what's the mainstream technology going to be. It's like, what can industries do to think about digital inclusion? And we know they've not done a great job on websites, right? The the world has not done a great job on accessible websites. Otherwise we wouldn't all be here. AbilityNet wouldn't be here if everything worked, right? So
It's
we're a
still my
long way.
daily trauma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're a long way from it. But when people start to own all of their digital estates, and industries are starting thinking about their entire digital strategy, think about things like open banking and what that's done for us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Open banking now allows you to link all your accounts into the accessible app.
mm-hmm,
So you get to choose the accessible one, but still get all your banking information in that one thing. Well,
mm-hmm.
open banking is massive for accessibility, but we need the banking industry to know that, yeah, and to start, making further investments in accessibility, right? So that's my big prediction: is legislators, politicians, we've got to build awareness. We've got to stop having a conversation just about the tools. I get pulled into conversations all the time about Teams captions. I'm like, great, but where's I'll just pick this out, but where's NHS captions, right?
Yeah.
It's not, whoever's building that thing for hospital consultations is going to need to use that cognitive service in Azure to give you the same quality of captions, right? So it's this idea that the conversation moves to be becoming more industry specific, and the voice of disability in each of those sectors gets amplified. And that to me is where I get actually pretty excited, because 26 years in, we don't want to just keep talking about the gadget, the thing. It needs to be the infrastructure that we have a conversation about.
Absolutely. I'm really pleased that you mentioned the EAA and that it will potentially have impact in the UK, because Brexit put paid to that becoming, UK legislation specifically, but still
Yeah,
it's an interconnected world. And I'm really,
it
really
is.
happy that you think that that's still going to have an impact on us.
Well, look, I mean, we'll be putting focus on it. Trust me.
Hmm.
We
Absolutely.
we want this to be successful. We 100% want this to be successful, and that's not me doing, Microsoft PR for you. It gives me real hope when you see a piece of legislation like that talks about industries and doesn't
Hmm.
just talk about, woolly topics of accessibility. It actually says, hey, you in airlines are going to
Yeah.
be responsible for your kiosks.
Hmm.
Yeah, that makes it tangible, and it means that companies like Microsoft can then go in. The biggest force in accessibility, in my view, is going to be, well, sorry, I truly believe that we have an amazing army of people out there at Microsoft going and having conversations about accessibility when the people in the accessibility space, specifically in the accessibility space, are not there. So when I think about a Microsoft account executive, when they go and have a chat with the CIO or the CTO or the CEO of a major organization about their accessibility, even if it's just high level, that opens the door for the rest of us to go and have those conversations about how we can support it. So the challenge for us all is to keep getting the mainstream tech builders to buy into this topic, and having Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple all in there having that conversation
Hmm.
gives permission for that to kind of happen. So yeah, I'm I'm optimistic. I'm cynical sometimes, Robin. You know that. But at
Realistic.
the same time, I don't think we've ever had a moment where accessibility has been at that kind of high level. We're doing okay. We're doing okay.
Absolutely. I'm hugely excited about where we are today. The laser focus on digital, the fact that diversity has got such a high
Yeah.
profile these days, and yeah, really, really excited about the future.
Can I give you
Okay.
my line about diversity? So I meet a lot of LTs, we call it leadership teams at big major businesses around the world. Uh, and quite often I'll be dragged into a room and the chief learning officer will be there thinking about their accessibility. The CIO will be there, sometimes dragged. Let's have a conversation, I promise you. But then the D&I person will quite often be there. Yeah. And it's kind of, oh, this is a D&I topic. And I'm like, well, it is a D&I topic, but it's also a deliverable. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I always say to people, for the D&I folks, you've got to get more digital. You've got to start building your digital skills to understand the impact of inaccessibility on people with disabilities and the D&I conversation. And you in IT, you've got to get way more human about your approach to technology. Yeah, you've got to start thinking about the diverse set of human beings who are going to use this system. So if you two can't find a way to work together, we're not going to make much progress. So yeah, getting D&I to come one way and getting IT to come and meet them in the middle is a great strategy.
Brilliant. I feel like you've half answered the question that I'm going to put to you next, which was from our last speaker. We always do this. So, Anita, of
Yeah.
Xbox, actually same organization. We didn't know that at the time. Was asking you about how to foster diversity within an
Yeah.
organization, your organization, how to make all voices heard, and how to really make it part of, you know, the culture and recruitment and everything. But I feel like you've half answered
Yeah,
that, and
but
we're a bit short on time, so maybe another quick comment on that.
yeah, just quick one. Meet people where they are. So we talk about a hub and spoke model at Microsoft. And so when I meet HR folk, I don't talk to them about things that are not relevant to them. I talk to them about their bits that impact the accessibility journey and what they can do. Likewise, our events teams. I mean, if you go to a Microsoft event now, you've got captions in 6 languages, you've got an audio description channel, you know, you've got all of this amazing accessibility. Like, we didn't do that. The events team did that, but it was built on a baseline of knowledge. So I kind of hinted at it earlier, but essentially all Microsoft employees take accessibility training now. Yeah. Once you get everybody baselined to understanding what is disability, what is the technology that people with disabilities use, and how do you build accessible experiences, everybody then starts thinking about what their bit is in there. And then the trigger for it, or you know, the match that gets struck to kind of ignite it, is to recognize disability in that part of the organization. Find the voice of disability so that people can have their kind of trusted conversation with their own people. That really makes a huge difference. So I'm always delighted when I'll go and give a talk to 400 people in a division at Microsoft, or I'll do a country visit, and 2 or 3 people will come up to me at the end and go, oh, I didn't tell anybody that I'm losing my hearing, but and I'm like, be the champion for it then. Like, come on, join me, and you help me build this momentum, in your part of it. So uncovering disability and helping people realize that actually the D&I piece, the representation, makes it real for people, is so important. It's so easy to kind of think this is kind of an abstract topic that affects others. The minute you find in that part of an organization a couple of people willing to talk about their disability, they have the mentality changes and people actually kind of want to make progress on the topic. So yeah, that would be my tip.
Fantastic. We can see why you're really busy. So just to finish off then, our next speaker is actually from Netflix. It's Heather Dowdy. She's Director of
Love Heather.
Product Accessibility. And you mentioned media accessibility in your last, as part of your last answer there, as speaking. So, what would you like to ask Heather? What would you like to pass on, a question or a comment?
Yeah, well, my question would be, and I thought about this before I joined, when we think about Netflix, like how do you help all of the different people feeding content into Netflix to build accessible experiences and kind of spread the load? That is such an important part of this. It's when we put it all on one single organization, accessibility is really hard, and it becomes more of a kind of a policy thing. And policy doesn't always drive the right impact. So how do you get people to kind of just buy into the beliefs of an organization and kind of spread the load and kind of, get the work done? That'd be my question.
Fantastic. That is a brilliant question. We'll put that to Heather next month. Thank you so
Perfect.
much, Hector. Really, really appreciate it. Love talking to you as always. And I hope it won't be too long before we have a good catch up again. Thank you again. And I'll pass back to Kelly for a bit of housekeeping. Thanks,
Thanks,
Hector.
Robin. Thanks, Robin.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Hector and Robin, for that brilliant session. There are lots of questions that we hope to answer online in the next few days, and you'll receive an email with a link to access them. Finally, just a bit more information that you may be interested in. We run online training sessions on digital accessibility. We have a special code to use on our training courses for webinar attendees. Use the code AbilityNet webinar 10 to save 10% on all our courses. You can book now at abilitynet.org.uk/training. Some courses coming up are how to produce accessible videos, how to use voice recognition software for accessibility testing, and embedding accessibility at every stage of your project. Next slide, please. We also have the TechShare Pro conference coming up in November, which is your chance to join Europe's largest gathering of accessibility and inclusion professionals and their allies. Please visit abilitynet.org.uk/TechSharePro-2022, where you can now get an early bird ticket for a limited time only. Next slide, please. You can also sign up to our e-newsletter on our website at abilitynet.org.uk/newsletter. And finally, don't forget about our next webinars, which you can access at abilitynet.org.uk/webinars. We have 2 webinars coming up in September. You can join us on 20th September for our cost of living and how digital can help session, and on the 27th of September for our How Accessibility Improves SEO with Skyscanner and AXA. So thank you again, Hector and Robin, and everyone who's joined us. Please do complete the feedback form you'll be directed to, and we'll be in touch with you soon. Bye, everyone.